Good afternoon. I'm Christopher Bozick. I'm a faculty member at the Canada School of Public Service, and it's my pleasure today to welcome you to today's event, 2020 Students Program Best Practices for Hiring Managers. On behalf of the school, welcome to everybody who's joined us. I love hiring students. I've been a manager for over 20 years, and I think it's one of the bright spots of the year, the summer hiring, and even keeping students in through the winter. Lots of energy, lots of knowledge, lots of talent, and we've got a wonderful panel here to talk to us today about how do we go about doing that. So just before we get to that, though, a couple of housekeeping details. Note, due to bandwidth, it's possible that we may lose the panelists. Their connection may break and they'll disappear from the screen. It's not that they don't love you, they'll come back, but please be patient and wait for them to rejoin. Sometimes we have to deal with these technological hiccups, and the clerk does ask us to be agile and flexible. So let's be patient if that happens. So we'll keep our fingers crossed. During the event, if you have questions, and we will have time for a short question and answer period at the end of this, you'll see there's an icon button on your screen, top right-hand corner. Just click on that, and you can send your message electronically, and it will get to me, and I'll share that with the panelists. So, without any further ado, I'm pleased to introduce Isabelle Racine. Isabelle's the Executive Director of the National Managers Community. Over to you, Isabelle.
Thank you, Christopher. It's a real pleasure to join you for this event. I'm thrilled to join the National Managers Community team, and I truly believe in the added value the NMC can provide towards influencing policy. I look forward to be able to work horizontally with numerous partners to ensure that managers' voices continue to influence public service decision makers. As a leader, I strongly support the idea that outreach, engagement, and collaboration are key to help strengthen the public service. As you might be aware, the role of the NMC is to be the voice of managers across the country, your voice. We represent managers and team leaders across Canada. We help you connect with peers and senior leaders, as well as discover useful tools, resources, and learning opportunities to assist you in achieving your goals and better supporting your managing your teams. It is important for managers to engage their teams. The NMC has developed engagement tools that provide proven and innovative ways to strengthen team cohesion and work towards common goals. Networking is also an essential element of your managers community. Reaching out to fellow managers will help lessen feelings of isolation, especially as we continue to work remotely. Managers in the regions also face unique challenges and opportunities. It is therefore important for you to be engaged in the community so that you can ensure your needs are being communicated and met. The NMC has 6 principal leads who support the NMC provincial steering committees in each province and territory, and we are always looking for departmental representatives to sit on these committees and participate in local initiatives and learning opportunities. Just to give you an example of how the NMC achieves its mandate, in order to better understand and meet the needs of managers across the country, the NMC developed the 2021 Managers Learning Needs Survey. The survey was available from August 13th to September 18th, and over 3,000 managers responded. The survey helped to shape the upcoming NMC learning events and inform our key partners about the current learning needs of managers. Being connected with the NMC, you will ensure that your voice is heard and that you are aware of upcoming opportunities that will contribute to the development of a more agile, equipped, and inclusive public service. It would also allow you to play a role in shaping the priorities of the Government of Canada. To sum up, the top 3 reasons for getting involved with the NMC are to be made aware of learning opportunities to better equip yourself, build your networks, and make your voice heard. I encourage you to stay connected with the NMC. Platform used by us are our GC Connects page, our website at www.managers-gestionnaire.gc.ca, Twitter, Facebook, and our distribution list where we send out our national and regional newsletters. In collaboration with the PSC and CFPS, today's event will focus on programs available to hiring managers, as well as challenges and best practices in hiring students. Thank you very much for inviting me today, and I wish you a great virtual event. Over to you, Christopher.
Thanks, Isabel. I love always hearing from the national managers community. I've worked with you guys, really for years and years and years, and it's always a wonderful interaction. So thanks. I'm glad you're here to present for us today. And now we are going to move on to our next two panelists. So we'll be hearing from Laurie Pratt-Tremblay and Jennifer Cuffley. Laurie's the Director General, National Recruitment Directorate at the Public Service Commission of Canada, and Jennifer is the Assistant Director, Product Development and Talent Sourcing at the Public Service Commission of Canada. So Laurie, over to you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Laurie Pratt-Tremblay, and just very happy to be here with you today to participate in this event and to encourage you and talk to you about our programs for hiring students. Students, as we know, are the next generation of public service employees. In fact, many of us have started our careers as students, and that first experience with the public service has really shaped and given direction to our careers. It may have helped many of us get relevant experience, financial support to complete our degrees, and further develop competencies to better prepare us for permanent jobs after our graduation. Hiring students remains a priority for the public service as they represent our future, bringing new energy, ways of thinking, skills to our organizations. You may have recently hired a student and by doing so contributed to this next generation. But for those of you who have not, student hiring is available throughout the year, so it's never too late. The onset of the pandemic has been difficult for students, so we're seeing less hiring and reducing their ability to find employment. Whether it's through the summer employment opportunities or students that maybe are looking for placements required to complete their degree, challenging during these difficult times. Strategically, student hiring provides us with a glimpse into the future, a future that as hiring managers, we can all influence. Recently, and in light of events targeting racialized groups, a broader commitment as well to building a more inclusive and diverse workforce, departments have been asked to provide clear and measurable results to address underrepresentation. Your strategy to bridge the gap starts with students. Our student programs attract thousands of applicants every year who can be hired to contribute to your ambitious goals. All our programs encourage students to self-declare, and there are many resources available to help you along the way, whether within your departments, the Public Service Commission, or community support groups and others. As of October 31st, 2020, just to give you a ballpark of numbers, we have over 79,000 students who are available in the Federal Student Work Experience Program Inventory. Used to saying FSWEP, so you know maybe what that, you've heard more of that long title, but they are ready to join your team and start the career with the public service. Of those, over 4,000 have self-declared as persons with disabilities, and 2,300 as Indigenous peoples, and 30,000 as visible minorities. At the end of their studies, if you have a vacancy, it's easy to integrate these students into a term or indeterminate position, allowing you to take advantage of the experience they have acquired and consolidate a return on investment while contributing to your organization's renewal and diversity objectives. If you've been reluctant to hire a person living with a disability or from another EE group because you do not know what to expect or fear that it may be too complicated, hiring a student is an excellent, low-risk, high-benefit place to start. The key to successful onboarding and a positive experience for both you as a hiring manager and your student, whether from an equity group or not, is clear and constant communication. Should your student not be a good fit, you are under no obligation to rehire, and you both come out of the experience having learned something new. Although the landscape may be different for this new generation, students seek work that speaks to them and makes a difference. Environments where they can learn, develop, gain skills, and share experience that will pave the way to a fulfilling career. When you bring new students into your teams, you can be reminded that we all became public servants, why we became public servants, and how we became public servants. The Government of Canada needs that new energy and spark that can contribute to the innovation and creativity required to tackle the issues facing Canadians now and into the future. During the presentation, Jennifer will outline the various student programs that are available to you, and you'll have the opportunity to hear about challenges, best practices in hiring students from our guest managers. I hope that you enjoy the next part of the session, and thank you for joining us, and I will turn it over to Jennifer, who will continue on with the presentation.
Thank you, Laurie. Indeed, today I'll present 3 student recruitment programs. As you know, as managers, we all have our preferred methods of recruiting students. I encourage you throughout this presentation to familiarize yourself with these programs and diversify your approach to better meet your needs, and even consider the possibility of doing targeted requests to hire students with disabilities, Indigenous students, or visible minorities. As mentioned by Laurie, our flagship and best known program is undoubtedly the Federal Student Work Experience Program, or FSWEP. It's easy to access from across the country. It takes only a few minutes for students to apply, a couple of minutes for the hiring managers to fill out the form, and also students are encouraged to self-declare. As the world came to a standstill in March, we did experience a brief dip in student applications, although this was reversed by the time May rolled around, with a steady influx of between 1,500 to 5,000 students per month, for a total of 79,000 students today. This includes students that have self-declared, keeping in mind that some of those students may have self-declared to more than one group. Other fun facts: 42% of our applicants are bilingual. Across the country, students are self-declaring. As Laurie mentioned, 2,300 Indigenous students, over 4,000 people with disabilities, and over 30,000 visible minorities. The top 3 most popular work types are research analyst, policies and programs, as well as business and HR. We also have lots of scientific students and other types of specializations. We have applicants in every province and territory, with larger numbers in urban locations. Students can register for up to 3 geographic locations. This provides them with the opportunity to include their hometown if they choose to return for the summer season or during a pandemic. We attract students from high school to PhD with over 250 specializations and 15 work types, such as agriculture, environment, geography, heritage, parks, client service, policies, programs, and so much more. FSWEP, as was also mentioned by Laurie, is an easy, risk-free way to diversify your teams. There are many resources to help you recruit students with disabilities and Indigenous students, such as mentoring sessions, networking events, and onboarding tools that we will be able to share with you at the end of the presentation. In fact, with the help of all these resources, I myself was able to recruit an Indigenous student who I was subsequently able to bridge into an indeterminate position, and he's one of my best performers. Recently, I also hired a student with a disability, and the experience is going very well as well. So how do you access this talent? You simply go to the FSWEP page and complete a form online, obtain your referrals within 48 hours. Or if you require a little bit of help, advice and guidance on getting that top talent, you can contact your regional PSC office and we'll be happy to help you. Another great option for you for hiring students is through our co-op and internship programs. These programs invite you to connect directly with the institution's internship coordinators to determine if the program that they offer meets your needs specifically, and also to discuss the best way that you can reach out to the students regarding the opportunities. This program can be especially interesting when you're seeking a very specific specialization or an emergent field of study. The internship coordinator can help you along the way as well by selecting those students that are best suited to the type of work that you're trying to hire for. So that also reduces your time to staff those student positions. As an example, at the PSC, we recruit psychologists as assessment specialists. In the regional offices, these are really hard to staff positions. So as a pilot project, we hired, I went through co-op. I contacted 3 universities, and we hired a PhD candidate in her last practicum with the intention of bridging her into a PS2 position, which is the entry level for assessment specialists, at the end of her 1-year internship. In that year, our intern was able to learn about our business. She had a mentor, and through coaching projects and on-the-job training, she was able to conduct research on our products and services. She was able to provide us with a fresh perspective on assessment tools. And of course, she provided services and training to our clients. So I'm very happy to report that the pilot project worked marvelously, and we will be bridging her in February once she obtains her graduation, once she graduates. When you're selecting co-op and internship students that are best for your organization, do consider more than one university, and even going outside of your region if the work can be done remotely. The pandemic has certainly helped us realize that geography need not be a barrier for hiring talent anymore. We have on our PSC website, you can find over 115,000 validated post-secondary programs that have been accepted as co-op or internship programs. Should you find a program in your area or a university that is not in our database, again, please contact your regional PSC office. We can connect with the institution and review the program and ensure that they meet the criteria. Last but not least, you can hire a part-time student through the Research Affiliate Program, or RAP, which is an excellent way to advance your organization's research agenda. Under this program, students must be enrolled full-time at a higher education institution in a program or study that requires research as part of the curriculum. The areas of research need not necessarily be from the traditional fields, but they have to be related to the student's field of study. Although I don't have experience in hiring RAP students, I have provided here on this slide a few examples of what they look like. RAP opportunities are created by the department themselves, and there's clear guidelines on how to do that, and of course there's support to do that, and they're published on GC Jobs along with the other opportunities, indeterminate and term opportunities. So here we have 3 examples that are quite recent. One for doctorate students with agriculture and agri-food. We have multi-sensor fusion towards better urban flood risk. I think that's a geomatic kind of position there with natural resources. And there's a Cadieux Léger fellowship with global affairs. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of what you can look for or even use. Here, I just wanted to mention a few words about our duty to accommodate. So duty to accommodate, of course, is available to students. And it's important, this duty, we must accommodate the students before, during, and after the assessment. So on the onset, this may feel a little bit daunting, But the majority of accommodation measures are slight adjustments, and there are resources available to help you out with those. After accommodation, it's good practice to, well, it's required to offer accommodation at every step of your assessment and prioritize these accommodation measures. This will help you meet your staffing deadlines and timelines. If you start with the accommodation measures, by the time you assess everybody will be assessed at the same time, and you can make an informed decision on who the best fit for your position is. Resources such as the PSC's Personnel Psychology Center or Shared Services Canada Adaptive Computer Technology Program are there to better equip you to provide appropriate accommodations for your students. All right, so here are student programs again. So now that you've hired your student by any one of these programs, you can easily rehire them through FSWEP without going through the inventory or processing their security request, security clearance again. All these programs are compatible. As an example, you can hire somebody through co-op, and once their co-op internship is over, you can rehire them through FSWEP. Same thing with RAP. This allows you to continue developing your student and eventually bridging them in to a position if that is available. Also, another fun fact is that the letter of offer can extend to cover more than one semester. So as long as the student continues to meet the eligibility criteria, and this may be helpful in avoiding issues with timeliness to pay, for example. I can hire a student in September, and the letter can be right up until the end of April, if that's what I choose. So student hiring provides for renewal and recruitment needs. They support our efforts in reducing underrepresentation in the quest for our diversified workforce, and they bring fresh perspectives and energy to your team and positions in the federal public service. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our guest speakers today that will talk to us a little bit about their experience with student hiring. Our first guest is Stephanie Austin, and she's the Director of Policy and Engagement for the Public Service Accessibility at the Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat. So, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this virtual meeting. I'm thrilled to be here to share some of my experiences and a few tips. So I've been committed to hiring employees from equity-seeking groups for as long as I've been a manager. I have actively supported all of my team members in their career development and promotions, but especially those from equity-seeking groups who may be facing additional barriers. So I've used a variety of strategies, sometimes recruiting from outside the public service because I had a lot of previous experience before entering the public service a bit late in my career. So I worked a lot in the NGO sector and in the academics sector. So I know what it's like to kind of try to come into the public service with a lot of experience elsewhere. So whether you're a student or in mid-career, sometimes it's just good to bring in some fresh energy and some fresh perspectives into the public service. Other times I've hired through the PSC-led programs that Jennifer was talking about, either most recently through the program for students with disabilities or the internship program for Canadians with disabilities. So in my current team, of the 9 employees who report to me, 6 have lived experience of disability, and the 3 others may also have lived experience of disability, but they haven't self-identified to me at this point. So there are many folks with a wide range of visible and invisible disabilities. They can be mobility related, mental health related, hearing, cognitive. These are just some examples from my team. And the team again, people are not unidimensional. They have many dimensions to their lives. And so when you're working in a diverse team, as mine is, there are 4 members of visible minorities on my team, 1 linguistic minority, and we have a team member who works in a remote northern community as well. So there's also some pretty good gender balance on my team, with a slight overrepresentation of women at the moment. And with that diversity, I think it brings such a great kind of balance to the work that we're doing and to the workplace. Especially in 2020, it's critical to be able to recruit, retain, and manage a diverse and inclusive team. So I bring a lot of humility, actually, and openness to ongoing learning in this work, especially as a white woman who's very committed to creating those inclusive workplaces in the federal public service. I think we always have a lot of self-reflection to do in order to recognize and interrupt perhaps unconscious biases or, just things that we do without thinking. And so having that humility and that openness, I think, helps to create a good environment for employees. So I will share 3 kind of tips on what I've been learning from recruiting and retaining a diverse workforce. So being flexible. I think being flexible is really, really important. Flexible about where people are working, when people are working, what tools they might need to do their work. There's one example that came to mind about a person I was recruiting. It was the day that she was to come in to sign her letter of offer. It was very, very snowy, a terrible snowstorm. She uses a wheelchair to get around, and she uses public paratranspo to get to work. And it was quite challenging. There were many, many delays, and this was very stressful. I was quite flexible. I was at the office at 90 Elgin, and I didn't mind if she came in at 9 or at 10 or at 2 in the afternoon to sign that letter. So it did, showing that flexibility and showing her that I understood her circumstances and the barriers she was facing that day meant that she didn't have to feel really, really stressed and undermined in that situation. So that's just one example. Another example is, as we've all been learning through the pandemic, telework. This is a practice that people with disabilities have been asking for a long time and often using for a very long time. And it is, it makes it more possible, whether you have a disability or not, to balance different spheres of life, whether you're a full-time student and doing work almost full-time, so you're balancing school commitments and work commitments and also potentially family commitments. So just having that kind of flexibility for employees, I think, makes a big difference. Asking your employees, what can I do to support you to do your best work? Because at the end of the day, an employee who has a proven track record of, reliability and responsibility is going to get the work done, and it maybe doesn't need to matter exactly where they are, exactly when they're doing that work and how it gets done. So another tip is being open and listening carefully. So not everyone wants to self-identify because some disabilities are invisible, many employees don't self-identify if they don't need to. And this is very much their right and their choice. Being open and listening carefully to your employees can help you create that climate that allows employees to feel safe and supported, to be honest, and to ask for what they need to do their best work. So over the course of your career as a manager, you'll have a wide variety of experiences recruiting and supporting some very different employees. And if you're open and listening to your employees and asking for assistance if you need it and advice from your peers, through the manager's community, for example, or from superiors or from subject matter experts in HR, for example, you can and will support your employees to thrive through all sorts of very challenging situations they may be facing at work. So the third and last tip that I would share is to build trust. So creating a relationship of trust is what allows an employee to bring their full self to work and to accomplish their best work without fear or shame or worry. Building those trusting relationships with your staff is a core competency for every manager. And the tips around being flexible and being open and listening really help to build that trust. So as the diversity within our teams increases, it's even more important to go to that deeper place and build that trust. Disability doesn't discriminate. Anyone can experience it in their lifetime, whether it's through an accident, through an illness, or just through the joys of aging. So I think it's really important that employees themselves who may have a disability, or maybe they're just caring for a close relative or somebody in their close circle who has a disability or is struggling with something. Especially in the context of COVID-19, we're all called upon to do more of that caring work, and we're still trying to juggle and balance many work priorities. So employees, I think, really need to feel safe. They need to feel that they can trust their manager to be supportive when times are difficult, and that their manager will help them find creative solutions to remain productive in their work. So I look forward to hearing your questions and chatting more in the next little while.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. And those are great. That's great advice for our listeners, for sure. I'm just wondering, you did mention that the majority of your team has self-identified with a disability. I'm just wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about what they do and if you've experienced any issues or challenges in accommodating their needs.
Okay, thanks for the question. So in my team, a lot of the analysts are either doing policy analyst work, so research and writing and preparing briefing notes and scenario notes for the deputy minister for meetings with her deputy minister colleagues or with ministers or the president of the Treasury Board. So they're doing a lot of that kind of typical policy work, as well as engagement work. So doing a lot of, we're pivoting now from having done lots of in-person events over the first 2 years of our mandate to now doing a lot of virtual events. And so a lot of analysts are planning and organizing and doing the logistics and doing the outreach to, create events that will really meet people's needs, especially occasions for employees with disabilities to feel heard and to be able to raise issues, barriers that they're still facing, so that we can come up with solutions together on how to remove those barriers. And the employees that are on my team have a range of different accommodations. As far as, some challenges in putting those workplace accommodations in place, sometimes a workplace accommodation can be as simple as a piece of software that you add to your tablet or your computer to allow you to read the screen, for example, a screen reader kind of software. There are lots of different kinds of software that can be available. And I would say, sometimes it can take a little bit of time to procure that software and to make it available on the employee's work computer. But it's very interesting with an increased focus since the Accessible Canada Act came into effect, an increased focus on accessibility and equipping employees with the tools they need to do their job. There are more supports in place. And in fact, for students, there's a lending library through the resource that Jennifer Cuffley was talking about. So at Shared Services Canada, through the AACT, there's a lending library of assistive devices. So students can come in and within a matter of days, they can have the software they need or the equipment they need to do their job so that they're not waiting a few weeks or sometimes in worst case scenarios in some departments, a few months to get the software equipment or adjustment they need to be able to do their work. So I would say that in my personal experience, there haven't, some of the workplace accommodations are just being flexible around timing. There haven't been many issues and no huge costs either. So I think that's sometimes a misconception that workplace accommodations are really costly. Sometimes, depending on what somebody might need, there can be some cost involved, but with the lending library, for example, it's at no cost. It's a funded program it's a pilot program for a period of time. So it's cost neutral. People can just borrow the equipment they need, and for the student, for the term of their employment, they have that piece of software or a piece of equipment, and then they give it back to the lending library at the end of their term. So I would say those are the experiences we've had.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And you're right, there are so many misconceptions out there, especially if you've never been in contact with a person that required accommodations and it's your first time out there. I find that in my case, I've had 3 different employees. Sometimes it's just a software, as you mentioned, or just like being aware of a condition that can flare up. I would say in my experience, what I've had that was the most complicated was an employee that had become disabled as an adult, and it was an evolutionary kind of situation. So it comes back to that whole communication with the employee, asking them about their needs and at different times. But that was the most complicated I've had because the needs kept changing along the way. So it's not a static thing necessarily. Yeah, thank you for that. For sure. And of course, all the resources that your organization is putting together will be shared with our listeners as well. So if you allow, we will just go to Dominique Parisien before we open it up to our listeners for additional questions. So Dominique Parisien is a manager at Public Health Capacity and Knowledge Management Unit, I believe. This is at the Public Health Agency of Canada in the region of Quebec. This is an agency that is super busy with COVID and everything that's going on. And thank you, Dominique, for being here today. And would you speak to us a little bit about the students that you hire and your experience with our programs?
Yes, thank you, Jennifer. Well, first of all, thank you everyone for participating this afternoon. I'm very happy to share with you our experience with hiring internship, co-op internship, and also FSWEP student. So for the last 10 years, my unit have been hiring and supervising students for their MPH, Master Public Health internship that are required in Canada. We've been hiring them from the Quebec University, so mostly all of them were Francophone and bilingual. And our unit mandate is capacity building, public health capacity building. So for us, it was obvious that we would engage with university in having students come to do their internship with us. And by doing so, we would also support our other initiative we have in our regional office, which is to promote French science, French public health science that is produced in Canada. So hiring or having internship in our team would allow us to train them to the agency priority, and also make sure that we would have a relève, how you say, I don't remember the French the word in English, but future public health professional coming into our Public Health Agency of Canada. And we were so much engaged in doing doing this. For the last 5 or 6 years, I've been in my SOMC, you know, when you do your staff recruitment, we would have the asset of recruiting people having the experience of supervising university students, because we wanted to make sure they were our future EC5 research analyst would be appropriately skilled and experienced to supervise students. And I have to say that all my EC5 research analyst positions have for themselves master degrees and sometimes PhD and even post-PhD degrees. So they're very much comfortable in supervising public health master's degree student. And also we do this, the project, the student subject project are done in collaboration with the centers of our agency to make sure that the subject that the student will be working on is on very relevant. Either we do it with the centers or we can also do with the Québec Province Institut National de Santé Publique to make sure that it's relevant and also very much is interesting for the student. So this is one of the criteria we make sure our subject internship project follow. Other thing is also to make sure that they meet also the university internship criteria. So all our student has to do scientific literature review, produce or construct, collect data collection tools, do the data collection when possible, the data analysis, produce a part of the reports, and also do the presentation to our fact staff or the national staff or our external partners. So our students are very excited to do the whole spectrum of our research of a project. These internships, as you know, are within 16 weeks, so you have to give them a piece that is manageable in 16 weeks. They are paid, obviously. That makes it very exciting for our student. And I have to say that Co-op and FSWEP do allow to have really interesting level, a rate of pay for our student. And also we make sure that we provide interesting experience for our students to promote their skills and knowledge, to put them as much as possible in front, not only in the back seats, for them to be known. And this way to increase their hiring possibilities. The biggest issue we have is finding the salary budget to cover these internship, because as you know, at the master level, rate start at $23 about. So for 16 weeks full time, you imagine it's about $14,000, and we try to have at least 2 students a year, but sometimes it goes to 4. Students a year. So we try to get funding from our center, national centers colleague to support the student salary, or from our own regional budget. Also, what's interesting in the model we promoted in the last few years is that the students get to do reports that are used, in fact. Some are put online. They are also producing scientific poster that are promoted during conferences. And I'm proud to say that one of our students had won the first prize for a poster at the Journée Annuelle de Santé Publique 2 or 3 years ago. And also occasionally students do produce scientific articles that are for publication in collaboration, obviously, with our own research analysts and our collaborators. And they find that very exciting. And also these MPH students, when they come in, they're kind of a level EC 2, and we're trying to bring them to a EC3 level. So we've been trying to integrate them in, bridge them in our organization, and till now we had about a 70% success rate into bridging them, mostly in NCR center position, PM4, EC3, EC4 position, and occasionally in our own regional office. And most of them that were bridged in, they also went from co-op internship to FSWEP contract and made it possible to complete their project subject. So, so I could say at the end that my research analysts in my team, they are thrilled to support and supervise students. It's a way for them to collaborate with the centers on key priority areas and to advance certain elements that we cannot do in our day-to-day job. So everyone wants to supervise students. And just to give you an idea, this winter we will be having 2 co-op interns starting in January, and probably 2 FSWEP students. So we'll be very happy to engage with these 4 new students. So I'm open to questions if you have any. Merci.
Thank you, Dominique. It's really nice to see you have so much passion for these students and integrating them into your team and giving them the best experience possible, and also giving your other employees that supervision experience that they require to move on. So really bringing it full circle, but also the experience, the meaningful work that you give these students, going all the way to even publications or presenting at conferences or having scientific posters, really goes a long way to jumpstart their careers in public health, for sure. What kind of feedback are you getting from these students? Like how do they feel coming in to your program, and then what do they tell their peers?
I think each year I go and present at the Montreal Public Health School, for example, and I'm getting more and more students in the during the presentation I do. When they hear that public health agency is coming to promote their internship projects and all that, well, I get a full room, and I'm very proud of that. For the MPH, even the students that are only starting and they're coming to me and saying, you know, in a year or two, I really would like to come at FAC, because they see our organization and the topics we're proposing that are very interesting. They hear about the previous students we had. They talk between one another, and they do see that we are offering a very stimulating and great support and monitoring and mentoring. They're very thrilled about their internship, and mostly when they hear that so many get a job afterwards. So we don't have any problem recruiting them.
Thank you. Christopher, I think we've received a few questions from our listeners. I'm gonna hand it over to you at this point.
Thanks, Jennifer. Thanks, Dominic. Thanks, Stephanie. Love the insight. Thank you very much. And yes, we do have some questions here. Actually, the questions are interesting. There's a couple here that I think I know the wrong answer to the first one, and I have no idea what the answer to the second one is. And I've been around a while, so you can see that hiring students is something people want to do, but we want to make sure that we don't run afoul of the rules, because we need to be flexible, but sometimes we got to pay attention to the rules too. So the first question is, if a student graduates in April, can you still bring them in May for 4 months as summer students? So it sounds like they finished their studies, but they haven't quite graduated yet. Are they students? Are they new employees? What's the answer? Who wants to jump in on this one?
I guess I can jump in.
Thanks.
All right, so again, an HR answer is it depends. So if they're graduating, then they're graduated. They do not have the student status during the summer, so they can't be hired. However, if they're starting, again, they're being rehired, then that fulfills the conditions to being hired during the summer.
Excuse me. So
but once, yeah, the directive states that once you've graduated, you're no longer a student.
yeah, I think sometimes the answer I got years ago when this came up for me was, well, if they haven't actually got their diploma or actually haven't had the ceremony, they're still technically students. I have to admit, I wasn't entirely comfortable with that answer.
Not convinced. Yeah, but there are other mechanisms for, if they're graduating, maybe this is the point where you need to bridge them in, bring them in as an employee. Or, if, I don't like to use the word casual, but, there is that 90 days that can buy some time. But there are other mechanisms for bringing them in.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, mentioning the other mechanisms. Casual employees, to get somebody to the point where you can bring them in a competition or an advertised process, I should say. I'm using the old language there. But there are mechanisms there. So thanks, Jennifer. Do you want to add something, Dominic? You're on mute still, Dominic.
Casual would be a good intermediate because you need to do their second language evaluation if you haven't done it while they were hired as student. You could justify in usual using the casual to do during the period of their evaluation and then bridge them in. So that would be my trick if I didn't get the opportunity to have them evaluated before.
I think that's a great idea. I know when I started, there was a fairly short time limit between when a student graduates and you could bridge them in. But if I'm not mistaken, that's been extended in the last couple of years. Is there still a limit?
There is no limit.
There's no limit. Okay, so that makes it easier for the hiring manager and allows us to be flexible. Because I know a lot of students, maybe after their studies, they want to take 6 months and go visit Europe or learn other things before they settle down to a career with the public service. So it's great to know that we have those options.
Yeah, and they can bridge into another department too. It doesn't have to be the department in which they had their internship or their stage.
And they can be bridged for a term and still be in the pool to get another offer for indeterminate from someone else or another term afterwards. Am I right, Jennifer, to think that?
Yeah, it depends. Again, there's always a context to staffing. So in theory, yes.
Okay, so thanks. You know what we're hearing here? It's quite clear that there's lots of flexibility built into student hiring because it is such a high priority and it recognizes the changing face of our workforce, right? When I started 30 some odd years ago, the expectation was you got hired, you'd stay hired, and then 30 or 40 years later you retire, pretty much having stayed in the same department. Completely new reality now, and not just because of the pandemic. Expectations for what a career looks like aren't the same, and part of what we want to do is be impressive for these students so they stay with us, even if it's only for a short time. Great, thanks. We have another question. This one's technical. I think this might even be a Finance Administration Act question, but here, let's see what we get as an answer. Can a student receive a work computer prior to their official start date? This one stumped me. Any experts in the room?
Well, I would say they would need I will try an answer. They need a security clearance before getting anything from the government. And they can receive it a few days before, but the letter of offer needs to be drafted and it needs to be signed. Even if the computer comes in a few days before the official starting date, that would be my answer. How does it sound, Jennifer?
Well, I work at the PSC, not at financial administration, but I would say that that makes sense. You would have to speak with the people, the internal services in your own department, your security and your IT department, and they would be able to let you know if they can send out the computer, well, send out or provide the student with a computer before their start date. You know, there are many factors. One of them is, yes, the security clearance, the letter of offer, all of that has to be done. They're hired in, and now with HR to Pay, we do have that 30 days between the signed letter of offer and the actual start date. But your IT department will be able to let you know if their workload maybe doesn't permit them to give the computer a month in advance, but maybe a few days before. So it all depends on your own department.
Okay. So thanks. I think that that clarifies it at least a little bit, because it is one of those gray areas. So I just to echo what Jennifer and Dominique said, you know, try to be flexible, but double check with your own department and maybe with your finance section in your own department, because you want to make sure you are not inadvertently breaking the rules, and even worse, inadvertently putting your new student hire in a bad position. So thank you for digging in on that one. The next question is a little more targeted towards hiring rather than whether we can send computers. So I love that computer question, because that is something a manager has to do. You have to make sure your staff is ready to go on day one, and it's not always easy. So the next question is, can you direct me to information for managers on using or initiating projects with the Research Affiliate Program? The online resources I found so far are geared mostly towards the students for applying.
Absolutely. In the links that we will be sending after this presentation, you do have a direct link to the manager's tools, and there is a page for RAP and the steps that you need to do to create your poster. You will need a PSRS account. But usually your HR department has that.
Okay, thanks, Jennifer. Yeah, we as managers, it's always nice to know that there's a fairly straightforward one-stop sort of shopping approach. It isn't always that simple, but it's nice to know you can start with a link, and you can always call the nice, friendly folks at the Public Service Commission for a bit of help if you can't quite figure out what you need. The next question is there a way to advertise to specific students? And I think by this they don't mean Bill or Bob or Jenny, I think, because then they say, for example, paralegal students. I raised the other one because can you go fishing for, as an add-on question, can you go fishing for a specific student you know is in the FSWEP or co-op programs? So can you advertise to specific groups of students like paralegals, or can you advertise to specific individuals?
Advertising is one thing. So for sure, like lots of departments use social media and all kinds of ways that we go to career fairs, we go to universities, we can go to specific programs, specific schools to, you know, speak to, say, paralegal students and entice them to apply to our student programs. There are targeted inventories that can be done, but it depends on the situation, and we have some criteria around that. But normally you would go through the FSWEP database, and through the searches and through advice and guidance be able to find people that would meet that criteria. But more easily, if it's a co-op or internship program, it's easier to target specifically to that level of detail the type of student that you're looking for.
So would it be, I'm just going to interrupt for a second, Jennifer, would it be fair to say that if you can't find, for example, paralegals, you can call the Public Service Commission and they'll help you with your sort through the FSWEP database?
Yeah, we can give advice and guidance on how to target more for those type of students, and also the other aspect of it, which is the outreach portion.
Okay. All right, so the next question is, we've got a couple more here. I work on the National Student Hiring Team at National Defense. I was wondering if other departments have specific student hiring targets per fiscal year. For example, D&D student hiring targets that we meet and exceed every year is 1,200. Big department, that's good. And student bridging targets are 200 each fiscal year. I was curious to know if the PSC knew if other government departments had targets to meet as well. And I'm going to add to that, are they targets or goals that you want to meet as opposed to quotas? So any thoughts on that, Jennifer, or some of the other folks here? Do your departments do anything like this? Don't all jump in.
Stephanie or Dominique, do your departments have specific targets?
I like this question. I wrote it down, and I'm gonna check in my at FAC where I work if we have this target and what's the rate. Very interesting question.
It is indeed a very interesting question. We don't necessarily have the data as well. Student hiring is a decentralized function, so we don't necessarily have the data on each department and what their hiring goals or their plans, their HR plans are. We know that the majority of departments are trying to bridge the EE, the employment equity gaps, but in terms of numbers of students to be hired or bridged in, we don't really have that data. But thank you for sharing the data for your department, because it may give ideas to others around the table.
Thanks. I know in my experience as a hiring manager, it was kind of the opposite. Each manager at whatever level was asked to define their needs. We were always encouraged to hire students, but there was no number of it. If I identified that I had meaningful work for 3 or 5 or 12 students, and I could, and I had the budget, or I could do a budget ask, then that was authorized for hiring. And that was pretty much, this is in 2 departments that I've worked, and that was pretty much the approach. Whether there were targets at the the deputies management table level, I really don't know. So interesting question. Thank you. And thank you for the answers. The next question, can you hire any student from the inventory if you know they are in it, or does it have to be a blind pull and can only use the names that are provided when you submit info? I guess this is kind of like the question I asked earlier. So if you know that Tommy or Betty is in the pool and you know they'd be a good hire, can you go searching for Tommy or Betty?
The EFSWA program is not designed that way. It's really designed to provide not equal opportunity, that's not the word. It's to provide access to students across the country. It's one of the only programs that is like that. And we do have quite a few sets of criteria for going in and targeting different types of students. But to say, you know, I want to hire Tommy in the FSWEP database is not really in line with the philosophy behind that program. So there are other programs that would be more suited to that sort of thing, such as co-op internships, where you have fewer students that you can meet and then ultimately hire, and wrap as well. But FSWEP at the moment, although we are working on modernizing our programs and the directives and policies, it's really designed to provide access to all students to the government job opportunities.
Okay, thanks, Jennifer. Anybody else want to weigh in on that one? Stephanie, I see you're interested.
I was just thinking that from an employment equity sort of angle, I seem to remember that you were saying, Jennifer, that that you could ask for equity-seeking groups specifically. So I think that you, if I understood correctly, if you're looking to hire a visible minority, an Indigenous student, or a student with a disability, for example, it's possible to make that kind of request so that you can help diversify your teams and give students from marginalized groups an opportunity to work in your team. and meet your employment equity targets or close those gaps in your department.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's a great point, Stephanie. Whether it's FSWEP or any of our other talent products, post-secondary recruitment, we have a whole slew of program, emerging talent pools and so on and so forth. Each of these inventories provides the opportunity for students or alumni to self-declare. And we do promote on social media self-declaration. And so on the hiring side, you can go into FSWEP, you put in your criteria for education, for interest work, and so on and so forth. And then you can click one or many of the employment equity groups, whether people with disabilities, Indigenous, visible minorities, or women. And the list will pop up with those who meet all those criteria, and we can refer them to you.
Okay, so it's good to know we can filter for the things that are important to us.
Yeah.
Excellent. So I've got one more question for you, and it's the same question I asked you at the end of the French session this morning, because I think it is something that comes up for students and managers. But what would you say to the student who's hesitant to accept a job with the government because they know they're just going to be stuck photocopying or fetching coffee for their boss? And more importantly, what would you say to a manager who thinks that it's appropriate to hire a student, a bachelor's student, a master's, a doctoral student, and assign them photocopying and coffee fetching? Anybody want to weigh in? Dominique?
Well, I would say that all the students, we have about 20 students for the last 10 years. And they had between 24 years old and 54 years old. And they all had a great bachelor, and they were doing their master degrees and a great work experience, and not work, life experience and energy to bring to my team. So it would be a great loss to put them on photocopy and coffee, how you say, fetching. So it's my approach is the contrary, to try them, to put them in stimulating, engaging activities, and to test them, to see how they react and how they are, and then to hire them in our agency, to attract them. So I could not imagine asking someone, it seems to me being very of 1960s or 1970s. I could not imagine that this still exists, but anyway, that would be my answer.
Thanks, Dominique. It mostly doesn't exist, but I've had an experience of it. Stephanie?
I think it's really, really important to talk to the students coming in and to find out what their areas of interest are, and to try and match opportunities with interests and previous experiences. So my last job before this job in the Office of Public Service Accessibility was in the Youth Secretariat in the Privy Council office, establishing the Prime Minister's Youth Council. So working with so many, like tens of thousands of young people across Canada who were super keen to serve, super keen to, participate in, advising the highest levels of government in what they can do to be, leading our country and making Canada a better place. So it was pretty amazing to do that work and to see the level of commitment and professionalism and competency and the diversity of young people applying really blew my mind. So many of those folks who were in the early cohorts of the Prime Minister's Youth Council have since continued their studies and their work, and some of them have ended up working in the federal public service. And it's quite interesting to see how they were turned on to a public service career through that experience. And I think the public service is not a very well understood organization, even though it's the largest employer in Canada. I know that going through all of my many degrees and my life, despite the fact that I had a father who worked in the public service, I knew nothing about the public service. After my postdoc, I was sharing my CV around in academic circles, and it was somebody in those academic circles who put me in touch with a unit at Health Canada looking for someone with research skills. It had never even crossed my mind to work in the public service. But I have never looked back. Like, as soon as I learned what I could do with my research and analytical skills and policy kind of advice kind of opportunity, I've never looked back to other spheres of work. So I think it's very exciting to bring in students early as they're still studying and acquiring those skills and not quite sure where they might want to end up, because it gives them a chance to try different workplaces and to try different teams and try different departments and see what they like and what they can do. So I think that in all of the students, we have 3 students working on our team now, and they do very meaningful work. Even, I was seeing a question about, in the context of the pandemic and teleworking, sometimes if you're newer in the public service and all of a sudden you're teleworking, you're not seeing your team members every day in the flesh or in person, maybe you feel more disconnected. But actually, these platforms, allow us to connect multiple times a day, with each other and have those really deep and rich conversations, mentoring conversations, coaching conversations, where the flow of the work is quite dynamic and fluid for incoming students or for very seasoned employees who have been around for decades. So I think it's very possible to create those experiences for students.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Stephanie. We've got a couple of more questions popped in. We've got time for 1, possibly 2 more. We'll give it a try. Question comes in, how do I target Indigenous students from the university's Indigenous Student Centers? For example, do I promote FSWEP, which just bumped there. Do I promote FSWEP and send a job description specific to Indigenous students?
Hi. Okay. So here again, we at the PSC we have a relationship with these centers as well. We through the university, and we speak to the associations and promote the programs. Each department is also welcome to promote their own programs to the various universities and the student centers, the Indigenous student centers. We also have at the Public Service Commission, if you're trying to build a relationship with the Indigenous networks, we have the Aboriginal Center of Expertise at the Public Service Commission that has all kinds of information, all kinds of resources to help along the way with that as well. But the best way is really to speak to them, encourage them to apply to our FSWEP inventory, and on your end, you can always do a targeted request.
Okay, thanks very much, Jennifer. And Dominic just sent me a quick note saying that could contact the National Collaborative Center and Indigenous Health to promote FSWEP, and there's a link which we will send to all of you at the end. I'm going to very quickly go to the last question as a means to give all of our panelists a chance for a 1-word answer, because that's all we have time for. A 1-word answer before we sign off. What has the feedback, you have been hiring managers, so since the pandemic, since March, what has the feedback been for the onboarding process? So a 1-word answer, and I'm just going to look at my screen and go that way. So Jennifer, to you. You're on mute.
I'm still thinking. Skip my turn. I'll come back at the end.
Okay, Dominic.
How it has been?
Yeah, you getting feedback from the students? Was the onboarding, how was it during the pandemic?
Well, they said that they felt part of a team because we do team meeting weekly with their own supervisor. She has meeting every 2nd or 3rd day just to tap into each other and say what we'll be working on it. They received the okay, you said 2 words. I finish.
Okay, thanks, Dominic. Stephanie?
So MS Teams, There are lots of accessibility features in MS Teams, and there are chat features and, meeting features and, opportunities to really talk to one another frequently throughout the day. So I think when you're onboarding in a pandemic, you need frequent contact and touch points so that people feel a part of the team. And so MS Teams is what I would say.
Okay, thanks, Stephanie.
100% agree on that. And in addition to that, you want to make your team aware to take care of each other. In our team, we have buddies, we have all those things. So even if the supervisors or the managers don't necessarily contact each and every person, they call themselves, each other throughout. So constant contact, I think, is very important to make sure that no one feels isolated, for sure.
Okay, thanks, Jennifer. Isabel, do you have a one-word answer to finish us off?
My apologies. I was going to say the same. I think it's really using the tools, making sure that you're able to let everyone in the team know that you've got a new student that started, and then organizing also team meetings just that are more informal so that they get to know the new student. So my advice would be really to encourage a lot of, and face-to-face, not just through emails. I think that's the key to making onboarding a success.
Great, thanks very much. So this pretty much wraps up our session. So great big thank you to Laurie, Jennifer, Stephanie, Dominic, and Isabel. We learned some great things today. The National Managers Community is there to help us with outreach and engagement and collaboration. They're there to support the managers community. I highly recommend you get involved with them. Laurie talked to us about the students being the next generation of the public service. We need to bring in new blood, new energy, and we can accomplish an awful lot with that. We've talked at length about the bridging that she mentioned. Jennifer, we talked about the different programs. It's easy to hire students, and it's easy on purpose. If you have any questions, call Jennifer. Okay, call your regional rep. Stephanie was talking to us about how it's critical to recruit and maintain a diverse and inclusive workforce. Just because people are different doesn't, or maybe especially because people are different, that's a good reason to bring them in, and we can capitalize on that. She said lots more, but I'm not gonna repeat everything everybody said. Dominic, one of the things you raised today I thought was great is you can align the students' learning with what your department needs, and you can give experience to your up-and-coming managers so they can learn to do more as well. And just the last point, you mentioned that you try and get them to bridge them in at an EC3 level. We often think because they're students, we have to start them as an AS1 or a PM1. If that's appropriate, great, but maybe they should be 2s or 3s or 4s. So think about that. Excellent panel. That was marvelous. I really enjoyed the day I spent with you guys. This concludes the event. Again, thank you. We'll be sending you links and presentations and resources in an email. There's a part of that email is an evaluation. Your feedback is really important to us. The school exists to provide learning and events for you guys. Don't be shy in telling us what works, what doesn't work, what you want to hear from us. We do have more events coming up. Keep an eye on the school's website. Thanks, everyone. Wonderful afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your day.